Here we are, year 13. I hope you're as excited as me. This is the first one. Let's go massive. Let's get price discrimination done in, I reckon, 5 minutes. Okay, so the bit at the top here, I'm going to do a little arrow to it. What's that? Don't go away. Oh, look. That's big. Yeah. This bit is what the exam board expect you to know about price discrimination. So the first thing is you need to know what the conditions required are. So that's what I think you should already know. There are 4 conditions required about to come up. Try and think of them yourself before you actually wait for this. Okay, here are the 4. So, first of all, you need to have different groups of consumers. So you have to be able to group your consumers into different areas. For example, you could group them by age or by different times that they might actually buy the product. Secondly, these groups have to have different elasticities of demand. It's not enough for them to all have the same elasticity. Some groups have to want the product more, therefore they'll have an inelastic demand, and others will have more elastic demand. They must be price makers, the company doing it, which means this would not work in a perfect competitive market. It would have to be in something like a monopoly. And finally, they've got to stop seepage, which I think it looks like it's spelt wrong, but I think it's right. One sec, I'm going to stop. So I've checked. It is definitely spelt right. I'm quite pleased with myself there. And this basically means you've got to stop consumers who maybe aren't some of the old people being able to get the product for cheaper. And they need things like, rail cards and things like that to make that happen. So first of all, you need to know these 4 things. And that's going to be the first things you put down when you talk about price discrimination in an exam question. Right, on to the second bit. Okay, before we go on with the diagram, I just thought it'd be good to see some actual examples of price discrimination. So here's one in bowling. So you've got, there's loads in this. It's almost too good, this one. So you've got people who are at peak versus off peak. So you have to pay a lot more money at peak times. I'm assuming that's Friday night or Saturday night. Not for me, obviously. I'm more of an X Factor man. But super off peak. No, I like that. I'm assuming that's like in the middle of the day on like a Tuesday. What else we got? We've got adults, juniors, families, students, and then even better, they've got a youth group. And then the second one is just saying, obviously, students haven't got as much money. They've probably got quite elastic demand for their glasses, so they have got 30% off for students. Now, what do we know about these things again? They need to make sure that they are able to stop seepage. So with this one, I'm assuming you'd have to show a student card before you're allowed the 30% off. Right, that bit's easy. Now you've got to try and do the diagram. There are 3 bits you have to do this. 3, oh god, just about fits, that'll do. Okay, the first one, the most important one to start off with, is this one over here, and this is just a monopoly. I can't really write on this thing yet. A monopoly, and this is a monopoly when they're not doing any sort of price discrimination. So you've got to do the normal monopoly diagram. You've got the MC line there, then you've got the AC line there. What do we know about the AC line? It has to be at the bottom right, so don't go away. Right here. Okay, next you need 2 more lines. You need your AR line. Oh, I still can't write with this thing. Okay, AR and MR. So, what do we know first of all? I'm going to change colour pen to make this more exciting. What do you know? This firm is going to produce where MR equals MC. So you do a dotted line up from there, and that's that point. And on this diagram, as soon as you hit that point, dot across, but keep on going all the way along. Potentially neater than I've done. Okay, and that is the MC for both these examples later on. Then you keep on dotting up again, remember? And you stop when you hit the AC line. You dot across. You keep on dotting across for all 3 diagrams. And again, that's going to be the AC for both the new diagrams. Right, now you've got one more line to go up to. You keep on going up, across here, and that is the profit that the monopoly is making. Now this is a bit that I always get wrong when I try and do the diagram. It never quite looks as nice as I want. So I'm going to have a go here. This is not worked. Don't go away. This is meant to be quite... what do you reckon? I'm going with it. This is meant to be quite an elastic one. So this is the AR line, and this is the MR line. Right. So this is the monopoly producing for its elastic consumers. What you'll notice with this is, where will they always produce? Where MR equals MC. So I'll dot it from there. So where MR equals MC. It keeps on going up. That's the amount of cost they have right there. keep on going up. This little bit here is the amount of profit they make off these people with elastic demand. Then, along this next side, I'm just going to move it across so I can get there. You still see that? On this side, we're now going to go for the much more elastic lines. That's AR, that's MR. Okay, again, this time they're going to produce where MI equals MC. Hold it up. That's what they'll produce. Keep on going up. That's the amount of cost they're going to have. Keep on going up. That's the amount of... Oh god, this looks terrible. No, it's alright, it's fine. That's the amount of profit they're going to get. Now, what do we know? This is a key thing to say in the exam. Even if your diagrams look terrible, which they probably will, you just say that A, this one, plus B is more than the profit made for C. And that's all you've got to say. So the idea is, this diagram is meant to show if a monopoly was making this much profit, if they were prepared to price discriminate, they'd make much more profit by charging this price, this price here, for a elastic demand consumer, and then it would be this price for an elastic demand. Now you'll notice my diagram's not ideal, but it doesn't really matter. Even if you get it slightly, wrong in the exam, you just got to try and make this one here look quite elastic, and this one look quite inelastic, and you'll do fine. Just final bit on this one. Just when looking at what have you noticed I haven't done on my diagram. I haven't done any labels. At this time, I'm just going to go for P and Q on each of them, and that should do. So don't forget to do that at the end. Right. Hi everyone. I'm assuming you're a little bit bored now. You've done the essay. You probably thought to yourself, I've had enough now. I've done my bit. I watched 5 minutes video. But this is the key bit. This is where we actually go through the essays. I'm not going to fully go through both essays. I'm going to give you some key parts to it, and I want you to look at the Mart Scheme, which will be on Edmodo. So, essay 9. What you've got to do first of all is you've got to try and define price discrimination. Now, I'm not going to write the definition here because I can't work out how to use this pen properly yet. But the first thing you do for price discrimination is there's 3 parts to it. The first part is saying that they're going to charge different prices to different consumers or different groups of consumers. The second part is to say this is not fully justified in the costs. And then the final key thing to say is you've got to remember to say that it's for the same product, because it's like that example of first class versus second class train tickets. That's not price discrimination because they're having 2 different products. Right, once you've done that, there are loads of different things in the Mart Scheme you could go on about. But I'm going to say the 3 things I'd say. If you like the other ones more, go with them. But these are the 3 ones I'd go for. First of all, I'd say there are different. Get my pen out. I'd go on about the different criteria. Can't spell criteria. Not convinced by that, but who cares? Okay, so that's criteria. So I'd go on about those 4 criteria that you need for price discrimination to happen. And remember those 4. First of all, they've got to be able to separate the markets. Secondly, those different groups have got to have different elasticities of demand. Thirdly, the company has to be a price maker. And finally, they've got to try and prevent seepage. So doing that is a section that you'd probably get quite a few marks for. But the key here is, remember, it's changed in A2 compared to AS. Every extra link in the chain you only get 1 mark for. So you've got to make sure you go through every single link in the chain to get as many marks as possible. Right, the second thing that I would talk about is I'd probably try and relate it to trains. So I'd be thinking about trains, and I'd be talking about how the reasons why people on trains have got different elasticities of demand. So you could be talking about how some people need to get at work before 9 o'clock, so they've got very inelastic demand, whereas there might be people going to London just for fun, and they could go at any possible time, so they've got very elastic demand. I reckon that could get you quite a few marks. Thirdly, in the Mart Scheme, they let you talk about the different degrees. Terrible at writing on this. The different degrees of price discrimination. Remember, there are 3 degrees of it. Right, first degree price discrimination was when they talked about each consumer being charged a different price, which is the perfect thing for the monopoly or for the company, because they can get them to get rid of all the consumer surplus for each consumer, so they can get as much profit as possible. The second degree of price discrimination is all about that they charge less the more you buy of something. So if you buy a small amount of something, there's a certain price, but then if you buy in bulk, you get a cheaper price per item. Then the third degree of price discrimination is the one that we normally do with the diagrams, where they group the consumers into different groups with different elasticities. Okay. Finally, after doing all that, all you could do at the end is do a nice simple diagram. I wouldn't bring out my best diagram for this question 9, just because you want to save it for question 10. However, if there is no question 10, throw all your big guns into the first one. But anyway, here's your diagram. And this is just such a simple diagram. You've just got price, quantity, and you've got supply and demand. Do some dotted lines. And you get to say, this triangle here is the, I'm going to go for a different pen, is the consumer surplus. I spelled surplus right? Who knows? Like consumer surplus. And what you know is if the price was here, P1, and if it goes up to P2, you don't actually have to draw this bit, you can just say it, then the consumer surplus would be reduced. And if it's reduced, the monopoly is getting more money out of these consumers. Remember, consumer surplus is the amount extra a consumer would be willing to pay over the price. And of course, monopolies don't want consumers to be sat there thinking, oh, I would have paid more. They want to try and get as much money out of them as possible. And that's the great thing about price discrimination, is you can group people together and get more money out of certain people because you know they've got inelastic demand. Okay, I'm going to do a very quick run through of what sort of things are required for question number 10. But what you need to do is look at the Mart Scheme and decide which bits you like most. Now, first of all, what I would probably do is I'd define price discrimination again, and I would also go through the different degrees of price discrimination. That'd be like my introduction. I won't worry too much that you've said it before. I just think this is a good way of starting it. Secondly, always good for producers. What they want right now is they want that diagram. They want you to bring out your big guns. They want you to bring out this 3 diagram thing to show how producers are able to get, when they put A plus B is more than C. And you need to get that diagram right. You need to label everything, because that's your key kind of starting point. Okay, once you've drawn that diagram, almost everything you're saying in this essay comes off that diagram. So these 4 points can be said to say why it's good for the producer. And then once you've done all that, once you've gone through all the reasons why it's good for the producer, then you go on to say why it'd be bad for consumers. And then these are all fairly obvious. So it reduces welfare. Welfare is that consumer surplus those consumers had, the ones who would have paid more. Those people are no longer getting that consumer surplus, so they're not as happy. This one is a bit wishy-washy, but go with it. Reduces equity. Some people might get really annoyed about it. You'll notice this in the news. If you look at people who are getting trains early in the morning in London, they're really angry that they feel like they're subsidising everyone else. Third point, again, is a little bit wishy-washy, saying if people are paying more, that means they're not going to be able to buy other things, and it's going to be bad for their standard of living. And then finally, and I think this is a fair point, is by these firms having low prices, this could be considered a barrier to entry, which stops other firms coming in. With other firms not being able to come into the market, that means consumers might be getting less quality, they might be getting a more expensive service, and they won't be getting as much choice. Right, here comes some of the evaluation. So once you've said these bits at the beginning, I reckon you're going to be stuck on around about 13 marks. They really, really need this evaluation at the end. And it's all pretty simple, to be fair. But the first one is saying that if there wasn't price discrimination, there could be certain lines, say for the train line, that wouldn't be run anymore, because if there was no price discrimination, the firm would not be making enough money to make that line possible. So the idea is the people paying more money are basically subsidising the people who are paying less money. Second point is saying that some people are actually benefiting from this price discrimination. They're the people who have got maybe very elastic demand, and they are now being able to get the product at a cheaper price, so they're able to get access to the product. The third one is basically a lie, I think. It's what firms would say. They'd say, look at all the profit we're making, you know what we'll do? because we're making so much profit, we're going to start reinvesting it back into the business, and therefore the consumers will benefit. But as we all know, has a monopoly really got that incentive to put the money back into it? No, because there's no competition. So that's probably not true. So you could, if you want, you could but in that position. And then here's another one, which is fairly true, but whether the consumer will benefit this or just the producer will benefit, is that if this producer's got a large market share because of this price discrimination, they would be able to have economies of scale. There you would define economies of scale, maybe give an example, and then say because of this they can have lower prices if they wanted to. Again, the key thing there is if they wanted to. They probably don't. Well, I'm happy with that. I think you should now have a fairly decent idea from what I've said of what you should be writing in the essay. Have a look at the Mart Scheme yourself, which is in the area in Edmodo, and see if things I've said are the same sort of things as you'd like to say. The best thing to do now is there's a 15-mark question and a 25-mark question. If I were you, I would probably have a go at doing them.